I think someone's been drugging your son. The words hit Luke Harper like a freight train. One moment, he was reviewing contracts in his home office. The next, his world was cracking open. 30 minutes earlier, he'd been on a call with investors about a new development. A normal Tuesday. Jake, his 16-year-old son, was at football practice. Everything, as far as he knew, was fine. Until the school called. "Mr. Harper, your son collapsed during drills. He's at Mercy General. You should come now." Luke didn't even respond. He was already grabbing his keys. Jake was his world. His only child. The one thing he'd built his entire life around protecting. By the time Luke arrived, Jake was conscious but sluggish, his voice faint. The doctors ran tests, asked questions, checked for injuries. Nothing explained the collapse. Then Dr. Elias Grant, a longtime family friend and the hospital's chief of toxicology, pulled Luke aside. "We found traces of prescription medication in his blood," he said. "It's not from anything he should have had access to. It's subtle, but consistent. This wasn't a one-time exposure. It's been building up for weeks, maybe months." Luke froze. What kind of medication? Benzodiazepines. Mild doses. Could come from anti-anxiety drugs. Sleeping pills. It's not enough to cause a full overdose, but it builds up, especially in a developing system. "But Jake doesn't take anything like that. He doesn't even take Tylenol unless I force him." Dr. Grant paused. "Which is why I need to ask, has anyone close to Jake been regularly using medication like that?" Luke's mind jumped immediately to his wife, Kate. For the last 6 months, she'd been different, distant, distracted. She left earlier for work, came home later, said she was rebuilding her design business. Luke had believed her. Until now. Dr. Grant continued, carefully choosing his words. "It's possible this exposure came through repeated close contact. Secondhand. Not ingestion, but skin-to-skin, shared objects, utensils, drinks. If someone heavily medicated spends a lot of time with him. The traces add up." Luke didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He was already replaying the moments. The smoothies Kate insisted Jake drink before practice. The sudden shift in her behavior. The man she'd started working with, Colin Blake, the architect. She said he was just a business partner. Luke had trusted her. That trust was gone now. "I need you to document everything," Luke said, his voice low. "Every test. Every timeline. Every trace. I don't want anyone else told. Not yet." Dr. Grant nodded. "Of course. But Luke, if this keeps up, the next collapse might not be so mild." Luke walked back into Jake's room, his face calm. Jake was dozing, monitors beeping steadily beside him. Kate sat in the corner, pretending to read a magazine. She looked up. "How is he?" she asked. "He'll be okay," Luke replied. "They think it was dehydration. Probably stress." She nodded quickly, relieved. Too quickly. She stood, reaching for her bag. "I'll go home and get his things. Maybe some of those smoothies." "No," Luke said. "I'll stay with him tonight. You should rest." She hesitated, then smiled faintly and walked out. Luke waited exactly 2 minutes before following. He watched her through the hospital window as she pulled out her phone the moment she thought she was alone. Texting, smiling, turning her back on everything that mattered. She wasn't just cheating on him. She was poisoning their son. Luke didn't feel rage. He felt precision. For 20 years, he'd built his company from nothing, brick by brick. He negotiated with men who smiled while hiding knives. He fought through recessions, sabotage, lawsuits. He knew how to destroy problems from the inside out. Now he had a new one. Kate had made her move. She thought he was blind. She thought she could live 2 lives, the perfect mother at home, the thrill seeker behind his back. But she crossed a line when she brought their son into it. That night, as Jake slept beside him, Luke opened a fresh notebook. He wrote one name at the top, Colin Blake. Then another, Kate Harper. Below it, he drew 2 columns. What they know. What they don't know. By sunrise, the second column was already full. Colin Blake had a secret. Several, actually. Luke Harper learned the first within 24 hours. He didn't waste time. At 6 a.m., after a sleepless night beside his son, Luke made 2 calls, one to Thomas Reed, his attorney, and the second to Marcus Hill, a discreet former federal investigator who now specialized in high-net-worth problems. "I need a full background check on Colin Blake," Luke said. "Personal, financial, medical. No leaks." Marcus didn't ask questions. He never did. By that evening, Luke had a preliminary report in his inbox. Colin Blake, age 37, architect, business partner to Kate Harper in 3 projects over the last 8 months. Red flags, credit score in freefall, 3 lawsuits settled quietly, 1 active lien on his firm's assets. Prescriptions for lorazepam and zolpidem, both recently renewed. Casino loyalty card, multiple visits to out-of-state venues over the past year. That was enough for Luke. He didn't confront Kate. He didn't ask questions he already knew the answers to. He asked something else. Who invited Colin to work on the Prescott project? Kate didn't flinch. He did. Said he had ideas. We needed a fresh look. We're trying to grow the business, she added carefully. You said yourself, bigger risks, bigger returns. Luke nodded. How often do you meet with him? Twice a week. Sometimes more. Depends on deadlines. That was all he needed. Luke's next move was silent surveillance. No trackers, no microphones. He wasn't looking for recordings. He was looking for patterns. He assigned one of his site's security leads, a trusted, quiet professional named Jorge, to observe Kate's movements for 7 days. Jorge's task wasn't to follow her everywhere. It was to answer one question. Was Kate seeing Colin Blake outside of work? The answer came on the third night. Same car. Same building. She leaves work, drives to him. Stays 2 hours. Sometimes 3. Different locations, same pattern. Luke didn't respond. He just closed the file. He didn't feel jealousy. He felt validation. Everything he suspected was true. But what Jorge added next turned quiet fury into cold strategy. She stopped at a juice bar on the way home. Twice. Ordered a smoothie. 2 actually. Both times after seeing him. Luke's hands tightened on the folder. Did she bring one home? Yes. Same flavor both times. That was the link. She saw Colin. She picked up smoothies. She handed one to Jake. Every gesture, unthinking. Every action, routine. And every one of them slowly poisoning their son. Back at the house, Luke began moving assets quietly. He opened separate accounts. Transferred liquid reserves. He wasn't preparing for divorce. He was preparing for exposure. Thomas Reed sent over initial paperwork the next day. Temporary guardianship. Emergency asset protection. All standard. They trigger only under specific conditions. Criminal endangerment, medical negligence. Luke approved everything. By the end of the week, he had surveillance logs, financial documents linking Kate's business funds to Blake's firm, a full toxicology timeline from Dr. Grant, evidence that Jake's symptoms matched gradual secondhand exposure. What he didn't have, yet, was a confession, but he didn't need one. Not for the next step. He visited Colin Blake's office Friday afternoon. No appointment. No warning. Colin looked surprised. Then nervous. Luke. Hey, this is a surprise. Wanted to talk. Man to man. They shook hands. Luke sat across from him. Expression unreadable. I've heard you've been helping Kate a lot, he began. Colin smiled. She's incredible. Her ideas, her designs. You're lucky. I am, Luke said. And she's lucky too. A pause. Colin fidgeted. Luke leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Colin, you ever give her anything? Colin's smile froze. Give. Medication. Drinks. Advice she might take home. I don't know what you mean. Luke nodded slowly. Let me be clear. My son collapsed. Doctors found substances in his blood that match your prescriptions. We're tracing it back. And if you think this ends with a no comment, you're mistaken. Colin's face shifted, from confusion to panic, from panic to calculation. I didn't give him anything, he said quickly. I didn't even know. I never said you gave him anything, Luke interrupted. But if you've been close to Kate, physically close, and she's been physically close to Jake right after, guess what happens? Colin stood. Are you accusing me of something? No, Luke said, standing too. I'm preparing you. You're going to be part of a very official investigation. So I'd suggest you get your story straight. He left without another word. That evening, Luke didn't go home. He took Jake to a cabin outside the city owned by his brother. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just time to think, to rest, to breathe. Kate called twice. Luke didn't answer. His notebook had 2 columns. And now, one of them was almost empty. What they didn't know? Almost nothing. By Monday morning, Kate knew something was wrong. Luke hadn't come home for 2 days. No texts. No missed calls. His office line went to voicemail. Jake wasn't answering either. At first, she assumed they'd taken a weekend break. Maybe a bonding trip. But then she checked Jake's location app. Disabled. She tried to stay calm. Told herself Luke was just overreacting after Jake's collapse. But the silence stretched longer than it ever had. And when she called the hospital for follow-up results, the nurse said the file had been restricted. Family authorization only. She was the mother. And suddenly, she wasn't included. Kate's hands trembled as she typed a message to Luke. Where are you? I'm worried. Please call me. No response. That evening, she went to the studio, hoping for distraction. Instead, she found a new problem. Colin Blake wasn't answering calls. He hadn't shown up to their client meeting, hadn't submitted drafts for the Prescott's remodel, hadn't even emailed excuses. By Tuesday afternoon, she drove to his office herself. Empty. The receptionist said he hadn't been in since Friday. Voicemail full. Office door locked. Mail piling up. Panic crept in. Back at home, she opened their joint banking app and stared in disbelief. Several of their shared investment accounts were empty. Not zeroed out, transferred. To accounts she didn't recognize. Ones that only Luke had access to. She called the bank. Yes, Mrs. Harper. The funds were reallocated last Friday under emergency marital protection. Legal paperwork was provided. We verified with your husband's attorney. Her voice cracked. What paperwork? I can't disclose that, ma'am. You'll need to speak with your legal representative. Click. Kate sat in the dark living room, phone still pressed to her ear, unable to process the sudden shift in gravity. Luke had moved the money. He had taken Jake. He had locked her out. She told herself he didn't know about Colin. He couldn't. They were careful. They were quiet. But her mind replayed every decision, every shortcut, every lie. And then it landed on the smoothies. She'd made one for Jake almost every day. Out of guilt. Out of habit. Sometimes after seeing Colin. Sometimes directly from Colin's kitchen. Her chest tightened. What if Luke did know? What if the hospital found something? What if? Her phone buzzed. A message from a blocked number. Your choices have consequences. Be ready. No signature. No timestamp. Just those 7 words. She stared at the screen for a long time. By Wednesday morning, Thomas Reed's office called. Mrs. Harper, this is a courtesy call. We've been informed that emergency guardianship proceedings are being reviewed. Your husband has filed temporary custody requests due to medical concerns. Medical concerns? The exposure of your child to unauthorized pharmaceuticals, the assistant replied flatly. Kate hung up without answering. She rushed to Dr. Grant's office. Demanded an explanation. He refused to comment. The matter's under investigation. On the way home, she stopped at Colin's apartment. Empty. Lights off. Mail untouched. The doorman shrugged. Haven't seen him in days. Maybe he skipped town. She called again. No answer. Back home, she sat in the driveway, unable to go inside. The walls felt foreign now, hollowed by doubt, darkened by silence. Everything was slipping. And then Luke called. She answered before the first ring finished. Where's Jake? She demanded. Safe, Luke said. His voice was calm, controlled, resting, away from the person who's been slowly poisoning him. She froze. Luke. No. You don't speak now. You listen. His voice was sharper than she'd ever heard it. Not loud. Not angry. Precise. I know about the medication. I know about the smoothies. I know about Colin. Kate opened her mouth, but no sound came. I've seen the transfer logs. The surveillance reports. The photos. The timestamps. Every lie, Kate. Every detail. You were careless. You exposed our son to a man medicated beyond stability, and you brought that exposure straight into our home. I didn't know. You didn't care to know. That's worse. Where's Jake? She whispered. He's with me. With family. Far from you. And tomorrow, a social worker will be contacting you. There'll be interviews. Evaluations. You'll have a chance to explain. But don't lie. Not to them. They're not as forgiving as I used to be. Tears streamed down her face now. Please, Luke. We can talk about this. We can fix it. No, Kate. You broke something. And now you live with it. He hung up. That night, Kate sat alone in the kitchen. She deleted Colin's number. Deleted the photos. The texts. Everything. But the past doesn't erase that easily. Especially when it leaves evidence in a child's blood. Outside, headlights flashed across the driveway. A car idled. Then drove off. Someone was watching. And Kate finally realized. This wasn't a fight. This was Judgment Day. At 9 a.m. sharp on Thursday, a woman from Child Protective Services rang Kate Harper's doorbell. Mrs. Harper, my name is Olivia Dent. We need to talk about your son. Kate barely nodded before stepping aside. Olivia entered with a clipboard and a quiet, neutral tone that suggested she'd done this too many times to be rattled. We've received a report concerning Jake's recent medical incident, she began. It includes lab evidence of prolonged exposure to prescription medication not issued to him. Your husband provided hospital records and statements from the attending physician. Kate tried to respond, but Olivia raised a hand. This isn't an interrogation. It's an assessment. You'll have the opportunity to respond after I explain the nature of our involvement. The next 20 minutes were clinical. Jake's symptoms, his blood work, the timeline, Kate's access, the smoothies, and, finally, the connection between her and Colin Blake. a man with active prescriptions for the exact substances found in Jake's system. Kate broke the silence. I never gave Jake drugs. I would never do anything to hurt him. We're not accusing you of direct harm, Olivia said. But exposure through negligence, even unintentional, carries consequences. What kind of consequences? Olivia didn't blink. If we determine that continued exposure is likely or that your judgment places your son at risk, we'll recommend a temporary change in custody. It could escalate from there depending on findings. Kate's voice shook. He's with Luke, isn't he? Olivia didn't confirm. She didn't have to. He's safe, was all she said. Later that day, Kate's attorney called. They've frozen all your business accounts, he said, per the emergency conservatorship order Luke filed. What grounds? Child endangerment. Pending investigation. And, this is key, he's claiming misuse of shared assets. His legal team submitted documents showing irregular transfers to Blake's firm. Kate's breath caught. He's claiming I stole from our company? No, the lawyer corrected. He's stating you misused marital funds to support a third party. In Texas, that opens the door to civil asset seizure if a child's well-being is impacted. And your name is on every transfer. Kate didn't speak for several seconds. How bad is this? She asked finally. Bad. He's boxed you in. Every move he's made follows legal protocol. He's not lashing out. He's dismantling you. Carefully, legally, and without saying a word in public. By evening, the local design community was buzzing. Diane Mallory, one of Kate's wealthiest clients, had pulled out of their upcoming project. Word was spreading. Gossip first, then emails. Vendors asking about unpaid invoices. Clients requesting clarifications. A cold ripple of silence moved through her calendar. She texted Luke again. He didn't reply. On Friday morning, she received a certified letter. Court date set. Temporary custody hearing. Emergency asset review. Attached were copies of emails between her and Colin, including one where she joked, Jake's smoothies are still putting him to sleep like magic. It wasn't a joke anymore. It was evidence. That afternoon, she drove to Colin's apartment again. Still empty. But this time, someone was inside. A man opened the door halfway. Late 30s. Stocky build. Neutral expression. You're here for Colin? He asked. Kate hesitated. Yes. I need to speak with him. Can't help you. He's gone. Gone where? The man shrugged. Doesn't matter. He's not answering questions. Neither am I. He started to close the door. Wait, who are you? The man smiled slightly. Insurance adjuster. The door clicked shut. Kate stood in the hallway for several minutes. Back at home, she found another letter on the counter. Delivered by hand. Luke's handwriting on the envelope. Inside, a single-page legal notice. Kate, you'll be contacted by authorities soon. I recommend full cooperation. Do not contact me again unless instructed through legal counsel. L.H. That night, she slept for less than 2 hours. By morning, her lawyer informed her that formal charges were being prepared. Negligent endangerment. Civil fraud. Financial misconduct. Nothing's confirmed, he added. But if the medical report aligns with the transaction trail and your communication with Blake, they can move quickly. Kate pressed her hands against her forehead. What happens if I lose custody? You've already lost it, he said quietly. You just haven't admitted it yet. That afternoon, Olivia Dent returned. This time, with another agent. They walked through Jake's bedroom, collected samples, took photos, asked more questions. When they finished, Olivia looked at Kate with a measured tone. I suggest you prepare for a longer separation than you expect. As the door closed behind them, Kate finally realized. This wasn't just about Colin. It wasn't about the affair. It wasn't even about the money. It was about a man who knew how to protect what mattered, and how to destroy anyone who forgot that. By Monday morning, Luke Harper had cleared his calendar for the next 2 weeks. No site visits, no investor meetings, no new contracts. Every ounce of his focus was on one task, sealing the case. The evidence was complete. Medical reports showing benzodiazepine traces in Jake's blood. Surveillance logs tracking Kate's meetings with Colin Blake. Financial documents detailing unapproved transfers from Harper Design Group to Blake's struggling architecture firm. Text messages that proved awareness, negligence, and reckless behavior. But Luke didn't want revenge. He wanted closure, structured, legal, final. His attorney, Thomas Reed, had built the case like a machine. Every argument was supported, every risk accounted for. We'll file for permanent sole custody, Thomas said. The medical endangerment alone makes it viable. Combine that with financial misconduct, and she loses all leverage. Luke nodded. I want it clean. No mess. No drama. She'll try to negotiate. She's finished negotiating. Kate, meanwhile, was unraveling. By Tuesday, 3 more clients had walked. Half her staff had stopped coming in. The firm's social media pages were flooded with questions she couldn't answer. And still, no word from Colin. She hired a new lawyer. Fired the last one for lack of strategy. But there was no strategy that could erase paper trails. On Wednesday, the court date arrived. Kate walked into the hearing room with shaking hands and a weak explanation. She didn't know the smoothies were dangerous. She wasn't aware of Colin's prescriptions. She never meant to harm Jake. Luke didn't speak. He didn't need to. His legal team presented a timeline showing each exposure, each transaction, each ignored warning. They played audio from Jake's interview with CPS. He didn't accuse his mother. He didn't have to. I just remember always being tired, Jake had said. Mom said the drinks were healthy. I believed her. The judge reviewed every file. 30 minutes later, the ruling came down. Full legal and physical custody awarded to Luke Harper. Temporary suspension of Kate's parental access pending psychiatric and parenting evaluations. An order preventing her from accessing shared assets until a separate civil hearing. No outbursts. No shouting. Just quiet judgment, delivered without emotion. Kate left the courthouse in silence. That night, Luke sat with Jake on the porch of the cabin outside town. They watched the sun dip behind the hills. The boy looked better, stronger, healthier, free from the cloud that had followed him for months. Is Mom going to jail? Jake asked suddenly. Luke shook his head. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she won't be making your smoothies anymore. Jake gave a tired smile. Good. They always tasted weird. Luke didn't laugh, but he felt something loosen inside him. The next day, Luke turned his attention to the business. He had already pulled his investment from Harper Design Group, restructured the ownership contracts, and redirected all client referrals to a new firm operated by his sister's husband, a neutral party with a clean record and sharp instincts. By Friday, Kate's firm had defaulted on 2 contracts. One lawsuit was pending. Her accounts remained frozen, her reputation in ruins. Still, Luke waited, because one piece was missing. Colin Blake. He had disappeared without a trace, until Saturday, when Luke received a call from Marcus Hill. Found him, Marcus said. Vegas. New identity. Fake name. Living off prepaid cards. Looks like he knew it was over. Luke didn't react. I don't want him touched. Understood. But send him a message. Quiet. He stays gone. He says nothing. If he comes back, I finish what he started. You got it. By Sunday morning, the story had gone local. Newspapers picked it up. Businesswoman investigated for endangering son's health. Kate's name wasn't listed directly, but those who needed to know, knew. Luke gave no statements. He declined interviews. When reporters showed up at job sites, his team said he was unavailable. He didn't gloat. He just closed the book. By the following week, he'd finalized Jake's school transfer, arranged new transportation, and installed security at every property. Kate's contact was blocked on every platform. All communication went through legal channels. And Jake never asked to see her. Not once. Luke knew the day would come when his son might question what really happened. He was prepared for that. But until then, silence was enough. Kate had played her hand. She'd miscalculated. And Luke had ended the game. With no raised voice, no threats, no violence. Just evidence, strategy, and consequences. Kate Harper sent the letter through her attorney. A single page, handwritten. She asked for 5 minutes. No courtrooms, no lawyers. Just a conversation. Luke didn't respond for 3 days. On the 4th, he agreed. He didn't do it for her. He did it to close the loop. They met in a small office adjacent to the courthouse, supervised by a family liaison. Neutral space. Monitored, documented, controlled. Just like everything else Luke had done since the moment Jake collapsed. Kate walked in first. Eyes down. Shoulders tight. She sat, folded her hands, and waited. Luke didn't speak. She did. I know I don't deserve to be here, she began. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to hear the truth. Not to change anything. Just to say it. Luke remained silent. I didn't know what I was doing, she said. With Colin. With Jake. I thought I had control. I thought I could manage it. But it spiraled. Her voice cracked, but she held it together. I never meant to hurt Jake. I never meant to hurt you. I know that sounds empty after everything that happened, but it's the truth. Luke's expression didn't change. She kept going. Colin made me feel seen. Not because you didn't, but because I stopped seeing myself. I was lost. Stupid. Selfish. I know that now. A pause. I understand why you did what you did. I don't blame you. You protected Jake. You did what I failed to do. Finally, Luke spoke. Is that what you wanted to say? She looked up. Mostly. Then we're done. Kate's face tightened. That's it. Yes. You don't want to ask me anything? No. You don't want to yell, scream, demand answers? I already have answers. She nodded slowly. And Jake? He's healthy, stable, safe. Her voice dropped. Will I ever see him again? That depends on the state, on your evaluation, on time. But I won't stand in the way if it's what's best for him. She looked away. I still love him. I believe you, Luke said. But love without responsibility isn't love. It's impulse. Silence filled the room. Then Kate asked the only question that mattered to her now. And us? There is no us. Not even eventually? Luke shook his head once. You made a series of choices, he said. Not a mistake. Not a slip. A pattern. You hit it. You maintained it. And you involved our son. I didn't know he was being affected. But you knew something was wrong, he cut in. And you ignored it. Kate didn't argue. She couldn't. Luke stood. Don't write again, he said. If Jake wants contact one day, that'll be his decision. Not yours. Not mine. He walked to the door. Paused. One more thing. She looked up. If you ever speak to the press, post anything, try to frame this as something it wasn't. I will bury what's left of your reputation in legal filings. There won't be a second round. There will just be consequences. Kate nodded. I understand. Luke left the room without looking back. That night, back at the cabin, Jake asked a quiet question over dinner. Did you talk to her? Luke nodded. Briefly. Jake didn't ask what she said. He didn't need to. Do you think she'll change? The boy asked instead. People don't change, Luke replied. But sometimes they learn what happens when they don't. Jake thought about that for a while. Then he finished his meal. Later that week, the custody was finalized. Permanent. Uncontested. Kate didn't fight. She sold her firm. Left the city. Moved in with a cousin in Arizona. Luke didn't follow her name again. Didn't check. Didn't care. He returned to work, built 2 new projects, expanded operations. But every night, he came home by 7. Jake was always there. Homework. Dinner. Silence when needed. Conversation when asked. They weren't healing. They were moving forward. And that was enough.